few weeks ago, we harvested our hard red winter wheat, and almost every single one of you voted for us to make a mash. So that is what we're going to do.
We're two hitchhikers. We met while hiking Mount Baldy with mutual friends, wasted no time, got engaged on a frozen alpine lake, got hitched, and have been adventuring together since. We're embarking on a new adventure of living big in a tiny home. Let's see how this goes.
Adventure awaits.
So a few weeks ago, we harvested our hard red winter wheat, and it was quite the process to separate the wheat from the chaff and then to winnow the wheat. And ultimately, the amount of wheat harvest we got was less than a pound. Now, I wasn't quite sure what to do with it, if I wanted to make a small loaf of bread, basically a half a loaf, or make a small batch of mash for a wheat beer. And almost every single one of you voted for us to make a mash. So that is what we're going to do. Now, I was going to make just a small batch of beer, but I thought, well, if I'm doing the process, I might as well make a full batch because it's the same amount of effort on my part. I just need a little bit more wheat. Plus, my brewer's yeast was, I'm pretty sure, bad. We had it for a long time, and the last thing I wanted to do was incorporate some yeast that was no longer viable and then have a stuck fermentation. So on our camping trip, we went up to Oregon and stopped at a brewing supply store. So I got some more wheat berries, and then I also got some Cascade hops and some brewer's yeast. But what I also had to do was malt our own wheat berries. So I took everything in this mason jar and kept it soaked in water, and I changed the water out at camp because we were waiting for the magic of it to chit. Yes, I did say that. There's a lot of puns you could make with that, but it's C-H-I-T. And the wheat has chitted, and now it is sprouting. Well, hopefully the camera is focusing on this right now. This was once really good chit, and now it is sprouted wheat. So what we're doing right here is we're trying to open up the wheat berry to make the sugars inside available for fermentation. So the first process is to chit the wheat berry, and that is just that initial little white nodule that comes out of the wheat berry itself. And then after a little bit of soaking and rinsing and soaking and rinsing, it will start to sprout when it feels the conditions are right. So now the next part in the process will be for me to malt it, and that will give the beer a certain quality that I'm looking for in this specific, I'm going for a farmhouse ale. We'll see how it goes, but that's what I'm trying to do. So yeah, there are calories in here that are sugars, and then the yeast consumes the sugar, and then the byproduct of that is alcohol. So this applies to winemaking as well, which, by the way, side note, I think it's interesting when people say, oh no, I'm avoiding wine because there's too much sugar in it. There's actually no sugar in wine. That is a misnomer. I don't know where it comes from. My assumption is that it comes from the fact that there is sugar in grapes. But in order to get alcohol, the yeast has to consume the sugar, and the byproduct of the yeast consuming the sugar is then the alcohol. So unless you're drinking a sweet wine, there's no sugar in wine. If you're worried about gaining weight or not losing weight because you're drinking wine, it's just the calories, it's the alcohol. It has nothing to do with sugar. So just food for thought. I hear that so often, and I'm not trying to condone drink more wine, although it is good for you in a small amount. But yeah, I just think that's kind of funny how that has just been repeated and repeated and repeated. But there's no sugar in wine if it's fermented all the way to dry and you get a proper amount of alcohol. Anyway, that is a complete side note. That is the wine nerd in me coming out. And the point of this is to make beer. So next step is I need to malt this. Typically, I would go outside and dehydrate it in the hot sun, and that would be enough to kill the sprouting and just give a little bit of malt. But I don't have the proper screen for that. I just have a 1-layer screen, not a 2-layer screen. I don't want bugs to get in this. So I'm going to use the oven and just dehydrate it on very low for a couple of hours, and that should give me what I need. We shall see. I moved this in the sun because I have the blinds drawn for the shade because it's going to be a hot day. I don't know if you can see that. That right there is a wheat sprout, which will actually be wheatgrass in a few days. So that stuff that you pay like a few bucks a shot for at the health food store, that's where it comes from. Now, if this were in the soil, This would eventually become a wheat stalk and then eventually produce wheat berries like we harvested here. So it's a cool little circle. Anyway, time to malt.
Hey you, I need you out of the way. Why are you not sleeping? Huh? You were asleep until I started doing all this. Now I have to stop what I'm doing so I can attend to you. I can't have you up here. I have to clean all this all over again.
And there goes the last of our wheat. I'm committed now because all of our wheat is in here. So what I'm doing is I am going to steep all of the grains first while I am heating up my water that is behind you right now. And then I have everything else that I need sanitizing in my 5-gallon bucket that is going to be the fermenter. Okay, well, the grains steeped and I just added them to the pot and now they need to boil for a set amount of time. So it's just a waiting game at this point. It smells like baking bread with a little bit of hoppiness in there. So this is the kettle. So this is where the grains have boiled and we do have some hops steeping in there right now. I added the hops to the last 5 minutes of the boil. I didn't want to add them in any sooner because I'm not looking for an overly hoppy beer. I just want some of those aromatics coming from the hops and maybe add a little bit of brightness to this ale. So we used Cascade hops. I did 2 ounces of the Cascade hops and this smells so good. It smells like summit beer for me. So whenever I would climb a mountain, whenever I would go hiking and I would hit the summit, I would always have an IPA. And this just smells like victory right here. But this is not going to be the aroma that we're getting out of this. We're making a farmhouse ale. And the reason why we're making a farmhouse ale is because, as you probably know, we grew our hard winter red wheat, that's a mouthful, harvested it, I malted it, but we don't have that much, right? We didn't get a huge yield. So I had to go to the brewing supply store, get some more wheat, but I also had some wheat on hand and I didn't have it properly labeled. It was still good wheat, but all I knew is it was wheat. So being that this is sort of an unknown beer, I couldn't follow a specific recipe. And I thought, let's just go for a wheat ale, a farmhouse ale, and embrace the unknown. So a farmhouse ale is just supposed to be something easy drinking, refreshing, especially, on a hot day. And it was really just utilizing whatever you had on hand. So think about like on a farm, they don't really have time, or back then they didn't have time to just sit there and create these craft beers, right? It was really just to take the edge off, quench your thirst, maybe satisfy your hunger if you haven't eaten all day, whatever it was. It was just a simple, refreshing beer. So that's what we're going for. I will keep the hops in afterwards, but it's going to be much more mild. So it won't be like an IPA type of a flavor profile. Side note though, hops. So IPA, I think most people know it stands for India Pale Ale, but maybe most people don't know the history behind it unless you're sort of a beer nerd. India Pale Ale came from when India was still a colony of Britain, and Britain would send over lots of beer, but the ales wouldn't necessarily make the journey. They would go bad, or people would drink them on the ship, who knows. But really, the beer wouldn't make the journey. So they found out that by adding additional hops to it, it would help to preserve the beer. So an IPA is a pale ale going to India because of the necessity to preserve that beer, hence India Pale Ale. So just remember that for your next trivia game or something like that. Kind of cool food for thought. So what I'm doing here, just waiting a little bit longer for this to cool down. Then I have to give it an ice bath. Then I will put it in the fermenter and pitch the yeast, and we'll call it a day. quite overgrown. I didn't realize these tomato plants were going to get so thick, but they are finally starting to ripen. So I'm gonna pluck a few right now to give them a little bit of breathing room. The weather is finally cooling off. We're at a high of 93 today. Yay! And this is the other side of the same garden bed. So I've got the tomatoes planted over there. There are 5 tomato plants. They're the Napoli tomatoes. And I have a basil plant somewhere in between. It has bolted and I just can't get to it. So if it goes to seed, that's awesome. But here I have our Hatch Green Chili medium heat varieties. These are the Big Jim. And we're starting to get some good fruit growth here. I'm very happy about that. We also have our sweet peppers here. They're starting to grow. All right, I'm on the other side of the same garden bed. This right here is one of those lumbres, and there are some chili pods on there. These are smaller. So I don't know if this is because it's getting less sunlight on this side than the other side, but that's okay because these are, I think they're actually double extra hot in heat. So if I mix these with the medium, I should get a good, nice heat component. Before we eat, okay, I want you to taste this piece.
Ooh.
And then this piece. Well, it doesn't have to be in that order. Just one.
One or the other.
And then the other. And I want you to tell me if you taste the difference. I'll go in the same order that you do.
Okay. This one's bitter.
Okay.
And this one has a longer flavor profile.
Yeah, this one definitely is more bitter. It's a little bit more acidic. So this tomato fell off the vine green.
Oh.
And I just let it ripen as we normally do. And that's what we buy in the grocery store. Like
Yeah,
it was
that's why
green when they pluck it, right? And then when we eat it, it's a little bit tart. Where this one, it's not sweet, but it's much more mild and just...
It still has a slight little tang to it.
I think I still picked it a day early. I was too excited. But I wanted to see the difference because I didn't want this one to get overripe.
Yeah, like if you were to make a sauce out of this probably wouldn't actually like flare up my stomach.
Yeah, that's true. This is pretty acidic here.
Oh yeah.
So that's interesting. Here's the difference.
It's so cool. So, I've been called to do fire duty. So, basically, all these fires around the area, all these machines have to be roadworthy. So, they've been out in the hills doing all kinds of crazy things. And either they break down there and I have to fix them there, or they're getting ready to go back home and they have to drive on the highway. So, you have to make sure that they can drive on the highway safely. So, they called me in. I'm going in. For how long? I don't know, but I leave tonight. So here we go. Boo.
Reuben has been out in the Trinity National Forest for a couple of days now. He does have a signal, but I think it's a bit spotty, and I don't think I've received every video he has sent me in their entirety. However, he is able to call me to let me know he's okay. In a nutshell, he's letting us know here that where he's located, this fire is a stage 4, so it's low on the totem pole as far as imminent danger. Stage 1 is the very high-grade danger where they have emergency services, etc. He's not allowed to film on site, but he just wanted to let everybody know that he's safe.
I am safe.
And he's basically working long hours. His reporting hours are 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. on site daily. And he's really not dealing with that much smoke. I think I'm dealing with a lot more here.
So you guys might be wondering, where am I staying? What am I doing? I'm staying out of this trailer right here. And it is a dirt bike trailer that my boss has. So it's a little messy, more mechanic-y than anything. but keeps me dry. And you guys might be saying, one person, what do you mean? All right, so one mechanic is necessary at all times to be able to check in and check out all of the heavy equipment and service vehicles that are being used here in the facility. So let me give you a taste of what it is. That water truck right there is used to tamp down all of the dust and dirt that flies up. This is a fire engine right here that actually goes to the front lines and puts out the fire. That truck right there is a person's personal truck. She's actually a truck driver. She transports vehicles up the hill and does all the other things, but they also bring their own personal vehicles that sometimes need work as well. So I have to be capable and ready to work on the water trucks, the excavators, the transport vehicles, the transport trailers, and all the necessary components related to, and sometimes not even related to, my job description. But yeah, so I'm driving basically a quarter mile from where my camper is to our staging area, which is right here in the front of an elementary school. And once I get here, I pretty much park up, get all my little things ready and to go, and I am then going to sit down and wait for the next time someone needs my services. Yesterday, I was actually really busy. I did get to sit down in the middle of the day, in the heat of the day, when there was nothing going on, but everything happens in the morning and everything happened in the evening. In the morning, I was checking in a lot of vehicles and checking out a lot of vehicles, and in the evening, I was fixing a fuel line, doing an oil change, and diagnosing a check engine light on one of the big transport trucks. It was a Kenworth T800. Tasha will put a little picture of a Kenworth T800. And yeah, do it all.
And in other news, we still have a lot of squirrels around the property. We're still trying to figure out how to combat them. Yes, they're cute, but they have decimated our sunflowers this year. But we do have beneficial predatory animals, like this dragonfly. These guys eat up all of the mosquitoes. Fortunately, we have not had a mosquito issue this summer. It would have been nice to join Reuben, but I had a few meetings that I needed to attend to, plus just wrapping everything up around the property. Too much to do on a last-minute notice. Perhaps I'll join him later this week. Plus, it gave me the opportunity to stick around here and try to capture some of the Perseids meteor shower, even though we had smoky skies. Well, family, that wraps up this week's update. If you enjoyed what you saw, please consider liking and subscribing if you're not already subscribed. And also check back next week for a new update. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.